Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. The sound of a clock ticking. Slow. Steady. Travis Holt had spent 20 years reading people. Liars, criminals, the desperate and the dangerous. But nothing prepared him for the way his wife's voice suddenly sounded different. Too careful. Too rehearsed. I have a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. Lauren's voice was smooth, but Travis felt the lie settle in the air like thick smoke. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched her closely, the way she avoided eye contact, how her fingers tightened slightly around her phone. A few years ago, he would have trusted her without a second thought. But trust was a fragile thing. And lately, cracks had been forming. A meeting? He repeated, keeping his voice even. Lauren forced a smile. Yeah, just business stuff. You know how it is. That was the problem, he did know. And his instincts were screaming at him. She grabbed her purse, kissed his cheek and walked out the door. The second it closed, Travis exhaled slowly, pressing his fingers against his temples. He had seen this behavior before, not in his wife but in suspects. His mind raced. She had been distant lately. Her phone never left her side. Her perfume lingered longer when she came home late. Was he overthinking it? Or was this something more? He walked over to the window, parting the blinds just enough to see Lauren's car pull out of the driveway. But instead of heading toward downtown, where her office was, she turned right. Away from the city. Away from work. Travis's jaw clenched. Where the hell was she going? The world outside was dark, but Travis's mind was wide awake. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his untouched glass of whiskey. The ice had melted, leaving behind a watered-down version of what it once was. Kind of like his marriage. His gut told him something was wrong. His training told him to find out why. He pulled out his laptop, accessing the tracking software he had installed on Lauren's phone months ago. Something he swore he would never use unless he had a reason. Well, now he had a reason. The small red dot blinked on the screen. She wasn't at work. She was at the Hawthorne Hotel, a high-end boutique hotel just outside the city. Travis stared at the screen, his blood turning cold. He could have called her. Asked for an explanation. But liars were good at lying. He needed proof. Grabbing his keys, he slipped on his leather jacket and headed out the door. The drive was silent. His mind, however, was anything but. Had it started recently? How long had she been doing this? Was it just an affair, or was it something worse? When he pulled up to the hotel, he parked in the shadows. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He had done thousands of surveillance operations. This was no different. Except it was. Because this was personal. From a distance, he spotted Lauren. She was standing in the dim glow of the hotel entrance, her arms wrapped around someone's waist. The man turned slightly and Travis saw his face. His childhood friend. Mitch Langford. His stomach twisted. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a goddamn knife to the back. And that's when he realized, this wasn't just about cheating. Something darker was going on. Travis forced himself to stay still, even as rage clawed at his insides. His best friend. His wife. The two people he should have been able to trust. But trust was dead now. He pulled out his phone and snapped a few pictures. The proof was there, but his instincts told him there was more to this than just an affair. Lauren and Mitch weren't acting like two reckless lovers sneaking around. Their body language was careful. Their conversation looked tense. Travis wasn't just watching cheaters. He was watching conspirators. A waiter passed by them, and for a brief second, Travis saw the way Lauren leaned in and whispered something to Mitch. He nodded stiffly, jaw tight. Travis had interrogated enough criminals to recognize the signs. They weren't just hiding an affair. They were planning something. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Stuck at the office. Late at night. Love you. His grip on the phone tightened. Love you. The words felt like poison. Travis inhaled slowly, controlling the rage bubbling inside him. This wasn't just about emotion anymore. This was an investigation. And if there was one thing Travis Holt was good at, it was finding the truth. Even if it destroyed him. Travis barely slept. His mind was wired, his instincts sharper than they'd been in years. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just an affair. Lauren and Mitch looked like they were planning something. The tension in their body language, the way they kept scanning the area, the low whispers, it all pointed to something bigger. And Travis needed to find out what. He moved with precision the way he used to when trailing a suspect. He had hours of FBI surveillance experience under his belt. Inside his garage, he opened a locked drawer and pulled out an old burner phone. If Lauren and Mitch were hiding something, they weren't going to expect him to play dirty. His first move? Cloning Lauren's phone. He had done it 100 times in the field, but doing it to his own wife felt different. Colder. But necessary. Within minutes he had full access. Calls, messages, emails, her entire digital life now belonged to him. And that's when he found it. A deleted message thread between Lauren and an unknown number. Unknown, it has to look like an accident. Lauren, I know what I'm doing. Unknown, he can't suspect anything. Lauren, he doesn't. He's blind. Travis stared at the words, his pulse a steady thud thud thud. They weren't just screwing around. They were planning his murder. Travis sat in the darkness, the glow of his laptop screen illuminating his face. He needed more. A single deleted conversation wasn't enough to prove what he already knew deep down. He needed solid, undeniable evidence that would hold up in a court of law, or something much worse. Digging deeper, he accessed Lauren's recent transactions. A large cash withdrawal. Then another. And a name. Derek Cole. Travis narrowed his eyes. He knew that name. An ex-con, a career criminal, and the kind of guy you hired when you needed a problem permanently erased. His hands curled into fists. Lauren and Mitch had hired a hitman. His own wife had put a price on his head. Travis exhaled slowly, suppressing the boiling rage in his chest. Emotion couldn't control him now. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was survival. And if Lauren wanted him dead, he'd have to get to her first. The city was quiet at 2 a.m., but Travis's mind was louder than ever. Lauren had been lying to his face for months. Sleeping beside him. Laughing with him. Planning his execution. And he had almost fallen for it. Not anymore. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Holt? Jesus. Thought you were dead. Not yet. Pause. Then amusement. Shit. This is gonna be good. Travis had worked Black Ops cases before. He had made enemies. But now, the enemy was in his own home. And he was about to teach them what happens when you try to kill an FBI-trained investigator. The game had just begun. Travis sat in his truck, parked a block away from his house. He could see the warm glow of the living room lights through the curtains. Lauren was home, acting like nothing was wrong. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. She had no idea he knew. He exhaled, forcing himself to think clearly. This wasn't just about catching her. He had been in enough high-stakes investigations to know that catching wasn't enough. If he confronted her now, she would lie, twist things, maybe even accelerate her plan. No, Travis had to play it smart. He needed her to believe she was still in control. Pulling out his burner phone, he opened Lauren's cloned messages again. Another text had come in just minutes ago. Mitch, we need to move faster. Lauren, I know. I'll handle it. Mitch, Derek won't wait forever. We have to get it done. Lauren, I said I'll handle it. I'll make sure he's in the right place at the right time. Travis clenched his jaw. She was setting a trap for him. But she had no idea he was about to set one for her. He switched to his call history and dialed another number. It rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. What do you need? Travis stared at his house, at the woman who had once been his everything. I need someone to disappear. Pause. Then, whose body are we talking about? Mine. Travis wasn't stupid. Lauren and Mitch weren't just confident, they were careless. They had someone feeding them information. Someone inside the FBI. It explained everything. How Lauren knew what to delete. How they thought they were untouchable. How they planned a hit on an ex-FBI agent without worrying. He needed to find the mole before they found him. And he knew exactly where to start. He pulled into a parking garage downtown and killed the engine. 5 minutes later, a woman slid into the passenger seat. Ava Maddox. She was one of the best hackers the Bureau had ever trained, until she got tired of playing by the rules. Now she worked in the shadows, trading information for favors. She looked him over and smirked. Damn, Holt. You look like hell. Nice to see you too. He handed her a flash drive. I need you to cross-check encrypted FBI communications. There's a leak. She raised an eyebrow. You know this could get me arrested? Only if you get caught. Ava sighed but plugged the drive into her laptop. Seconds later, her fingers flew over the keyboard. Lines of code. Firewalls bypassed. Then, her eyes flickered with interest. Well, guess who's been talking to your wife? Travis stared at the screen. His blood turned cold. Agent Mark Caffrey. His own former partner. Bastard, Travis muttered. Ava whistled. He's been feeding them information for weeks. Travis nodded slowly. He wasn't surprised. He had trusted Caffrey for years. Now, he was just another target. Travis knew how hitmen operated. They weren't patient. Derek Cole had been hired to make it look like an accident. That meant it was already in motion. And if Lauren said she would handle it, that meant she had already picked a time and place. He just had to be there first. By midnight he was back home. Lauren was already asleep, her breathing soft, peaceful. Like she wasn't planning his murder. He lay next to her, staring at the ceiling. Every instinct screamed at him to end it now. To pin her against the wall and demand the truth. But truth wouldn't save him. Strategy would. He turned slightly, watching the woman he had once loved. The woman who now wanted him dead. She wasn't going to get what she wanted. By morning he would be gone. And by nightfall? She would believe he was dead. The morning Travis was supposed to die, he woke up at 5 a.m. Lauren was still asleep, her arm draped lazily across his chest. How many nights had she laid beside him, knowing she was plotting his murder? He carefully moved her arm, got out of bed, and stepped into the bathroom. His reflection stared back at him, cold, calculating, alive. But by tonight, the world would believe otherwise. Travis had spent the last 12 hours crafting the perfect exit. A staged accident. A car crash. A disappearance with no body to be found. He had pulled off hundreds of operations in his FBI days. This was just another mission. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He checked the message. Ava, it's ready. No loose ends. Good. Ava had helped him erase digital traces, canceling his credit cards, rerouting his phone signals, even hacking traffic cams to show his car driving off a bridge. By noon he had packed a small bag with essentials, cash, a burner phone, and a new identity waiting for him. By evening he would vanish. And by nightfall? Lauren and Mitch would believe they had won. Lauren kissed him goodbye that morning the same way she always did. Like she wasn't counting down the hours until he died. Like she wasn't already spending his life insurance in her mind. Travis played his part, acting normal. Smiling. Kissing her back. Then he left. Not for work. For war. 7:45 p.m. Lauren sat in a dimly lit restaurant, sipping red wine, her fingers tapping impatiently against the glass. Across from her, Mitch was watching her carefully. It's done? He asked. Lauren exhaled, relaxing into her seat. By now, yeah. The crash should have happened hours ago. It'll take them a while to recover the car from the river. She took another sip of wine, savoring the moment. The plan had been too easy. A small malfunction in Travis's car, a timed GPS route that led to the bridge, and a well-placed cut in the brake line. It had taken a single phone call to Derek Cole, and just like that, Travis Holt was dead. Mitch grinned. I gotta say, I thought you'd hesitate. Lauren smirked. What? Because I was married to him? Mitch chuckled. Because you were in love with him once. Lauren rolled her eyes. Love is just another illusion. She lifted her glass in a toast. To new beginnings. Mitch clinked his glass against hers. And to never looking back. But just as she was about to drink, her phone buzzed. She frowned, setting her glass down. It was a message from an unknown number. Lauren's heart skipped. Unknown, you should have made sure the body was found. Her breath hitched. She read the message again. What the hell? Mitch noticed her reaction. What's wrong? Lauren shook her head. Nothing. Had to be a prank. Didn't it? Lauren sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, staring at the message. Her mind raced. No one else knew about the accident. No one except her, Mitch, and Derek. She typed back quickly. Lauren, who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Unknown, you know who. Lauren's hand shook. Mitch stood by the window watching the city lights. Are you gonna tell me what's going on? Lauren hesitated. It's just some spam message. Mitch turned to her, unconvinced. You sure? Lauren wasn't. The message was too deliberate. Too direct. And then, another one came. Unknown, enjoy the money, Lauren. It won't last long. Lauren shot up from the bed. We need to get Derek on the phone. Now. Mitch's eyes darkened. He pulled out his burner phone and dialed. Ring. Ring. No answer. Mitch cursed under his breath. Something's wrong. Lauren's pulse pounded. Had Derek screwed up? Had he told someone? She didn't believe in ghosts. But Travis was dead. Wasn't he? Lauren sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers clenched around her phone. She couldn't breathe. Travis was dead. She had watched the plan unfold perfectly. The car crash. The news reports. The confirmation that authorities were searching for his body in the river. So who the hell was messaging her? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown, don't worry, Lauren. I'll see you soon. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. Mitch stormed into the bedroom, tossing his phone onto the nightstand. Derek's not answering. His voice was sharp. Angry. Lauren stared at him, trying to control the shaking in her hands. This isn't possible. Mitch exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. It's some sick joke. Maybe someone saw the accident and is messing with us. Lauren wanted to believe that. But something deep in her gut told her this wasn't a prank. Mitch sat beside her, gripping her wrist. We need to stay calm. Lauren's phone buzzed again. She jumped. Unknown, still drinking red wine, huh? You always did love the expensive stuff. Her blood ran cold. She had been drinking red wine at the restaurant just hours ago. Someone had been watching. Lauren's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around her phone as she finally typed back. Lauren, who the hell are you? There was no response. Just silence. But for the first time in her life, Lauren felt like she wasn't in control anymore. Mitch paced in the living room, his fists clenched. Something was wrong. Derek was missing. Lauren was spiraling. And now these messages. He needed answers. Fast. Mitch grabbed his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. It rang twice before a voice answered. Who the hell is this? Derek Cole. Where is he? Pause. Then laughter. Low, dark, amused. You mean the guy they found floating in the docks this morning? Mitch froze. His entire body went rigid. His grip tightened on the phone. What did you just say? Dead. Bullet in the head. Guess someone wanted him gone. Mitch's stomach twisted. He ended the call and turned toward Lauren. His face was pale. Lauren's eyes widened. What? What happened? Mitch swallowed hard. Derek's dead. Lauren felt like the floor beneath her disappeared. No. This wasn't possible. Derek was supposed to kill Travis. Not the other way around. Her phone buzzed again. She almost didn't want to look. But she did. Unknown, 1 down. 2 to go. Lauren's hands shook violently. Mitch snatched the phone from her grip, reading the message. His jaw tightened. We need to get out of here. Lauren nodded quickly. They had money. They could disappear. They had planned for this. But as they rushed toward the door, the power in the entire house went out. Darkness swallowed them. And then, in the pitch-black silence, a sound echoed from the hallway. Click, 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 like footsteps. Mitch's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He yanked open a drawer, pulling out a handgun. Who's there? His voice was sharp, demanding. Silence. Lauren's breathing was ragged beside him. It's him, she whispered. Mitch's fingers tightened on the gun. That's impossible. Then, a low chuckle. From inside the house. Lauren's stomach dropped. Mitch pointed the gun toward the hallway, stepping forward. Every inch of him screamed to run, but he couldn't show fear. Come out, you son of a bitch, he shouted. Silence. Then, another buzz from Lauren's phone. She flinched, staring at the screen. Unknown, welcome to the game. A single chilling realization crashed over her. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't paranoia. Travis was alive. And he was hunting them. Mitch gripped the gun tighter, his pulse hammering against his ribs. The house was too quiet. Lauren stood frozen beside him, her face pale, her breath coming in short gasps. He's not here, Mitch muttered, trying to convince himself as much as her. He can't be here. Lauren shook her head violently. You don't understand. This is what he does. He hunts people. He makes them think they're safe when they're not. Mitch's fingers twitched on the trigger. He had seen Travis in action before. The man was a ghost when he wanted to be. Lauren's phone buzzed again. She jumped, staring at the screen. Another message. Unknown, still think I'm dead? Mitch snatched the phone from her hand, rage boiling inside him. He typed a message back. "Mitch, where are you, you bastard?" The response came instantly. "Unknown, closer than you think." A cold sweat broke out on the back of Mitch's neck. He turned, eyes scanning the dark corners of the house. His paranoia spiked. Was he watching them right now? Lauren grabbed his arm. "We have to go. Now." Mitch nodded, his jaw tight. He pulled out his car keys. "We'll take my car. Go somewhere safe." They moved toward the door. Mitch's hands shook as he unlocked it. But when he swung it open, a black SUV was parked directly across the street, its headlights off. Lauren sucked in a sharp breath. "He's watching us." Mitch shoved her inside the car. "We're leaving." Lauren's hands fumbled as she buckled herself in. Mitch started the engine, but nothing. The car wouldn't turn over. Lauren's panic exploded. "No, no, no. It worked earlier." Mitch cursed, trying again. Still nothing. Then his phone buzzed. "Unknown, going somewhere?" A chill ran through Mitch's spine. Travis had cut the engine. They were trapped. Mitch threw open the car door, gun raised, scanning the darkness. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No sound. Just stillness. "He's playing with us," Lauren whispered. Her voice was thin, shaking. Mitch tried to breathe, tried to think. They had money, connections. They could still run. He grabbed Lauren's wrist, yanking her toward the house. "We'll get another car. The BMW in the garage." Lauren nodded quickly. They still had a chance. They reached the front door. Mitch fumbled with his keys, hands slick with sweat. He jammed the key into the lock. But the door was already open. Lauren froze. Mitch's stomach dropped. The house had been locked when they left, which meant someone had been inside while they were gone. Mitch raised his gun, stepping forward. "Stay behind me." Lauren barely breathed as they crossed the threshold. The house was eerily silent. Nothing looked out of place, but something felt wrong. Then, Lauren let out a choked gasp. Mitch followed her gaze. His blood turned ice. The living room wall was covered in photos of them. Dozens of them. Some from tonight. Lauren at the restaurant. Mitch pacing in the living room. Lauren staring at her phone in panic. They had been watched. Every single moment. Pinned to the center of the collage, a single photo of Travis staring into the camera. A message was scrawled beneath it in red marker. "You should have buried me deeper." Lauren screamed. Mitch grabbed her, dragging her toward the back door. "We're leaving. Now." But before they could reach the exit, a gunshot shattered the silence. Glass exploded as a bullet tore through the window, missing Mitch's head by inches. They hit the floor. Lauren sobbed, clutching Mitch's arm. Mitch's mind raced. This wasn't random. Travis wasn't trying to kill them. He was hunting them. One more at a time. Lauren's body shook violently as Mitch dragged her toward the hallway. Another gunshot cracked the air. "Go. Move." Mitch snarled, forcing her toward the garage. They stumbled through the door. Mitch's hand slammed against the button to open the garage door. Nothing. The power was still out. Lauren grabbed the car keys off the hook, her fingers trembling. "The BMW. We can still." The motion sensor light in the garage flickered to life. Both of them froze. On the windshield of the BMW, something had been scrawled in red spray paint. "Running won't save you." Lauren let out a choked sob. Mitch's mind reeled. How the hell was Travis everywhere? He wasn't a goddamn ghost, he was one man. And yet, every move they made, he was one step ahead. Mitch clenched his jaw. Enough. He wasn't going to be played with. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Lauren looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. "Who are you calling?" Mitch pressed the phone to his ear. "Danny," he muttered. "I need a gunman." Lauren stared at him. "You're hiring someone?" Mitch's expression was dark. "Cool. If Travis wants to play this game," he said, voice low, "then let's see what happens when we fight back." Lauren swallowed hard. Because deep down she knew the truth. Travis wasn't the one running. They were. Pause right here, amazing listeners. Did you know? Only 10% of people who enjoy these stories actually subscribe. I pour my heart into bringing you incredible stories every single day, and this month I have a big goal, 2,000 subscribers. So, if you love these stories, smash that subscribe button right now and be part of this journey. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Alright, let's dive back into the story. Mitch paced back and forth in the dimly lit motel room, his jaw clenched, the phone pressed tightly against his ear. "Danny, listen to me, I need this done fast," he said, his voice low, sharp. On the other end of the line, Danny Vega, a professional fixer with a reputation for cleaning up messes, chuckled. "You sure about this, Langford? You don't hire me unless you want someone to disappear." Mitch's grip tightened around the phone. "I don't want him to disappear. I want him dead." Pause. "Then, dead men don't send text messages." Mitch's stomach turned. His eyes flickered toward Lauren, who sat curled up on the edge of the motel bed, staring blankly at her phone. She hadn't said a word since they escaped the house. Travis had broken something inside her. Mitch turned away, lowering his voice. "Are you taking the job or not?" Danny exhaled. "I'll put someone on it. But if this guy is ex-FBI, he won't go down easy." Mitch's jaw tightened. "I don't care what it takes. Find him. Kill him." Danny chuckled darkly. "Your funeral, Langford." The line went dead. Mitch exhaled sharply, tossing the phone onto the table. Lauren finally spoke, her voice hollow. "You think this will stop him?" Mitch turned to her, his patience thinning. "Do you have a better idea?" Lauren's eyes darkened. "We should leave the country." Mitch scoffed. "And how long before he finds us?" "Face it, Lauren. The only way this ends is if he dies first." Lauren swallowed hard, looking away. Deep down she knew Mitch was right. But something in her gut told her Travis wasn't going to die that easily. Danny Vega was good at what he did. He didn't ask questions. He didn't care about morality. He took money and made problems disappear. And tonight he had one job. Find Travis Holt. Kill him. The hitman Danny had sent, Jorge Ruiz, was a ruthless professional. He had never failed a job before. But as he sat in his car outside the small cabin in the woods, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Travis Holt had been too easy to find. Too easy to track. And when something was too easy in this line of work, was a trap. Ruiz exhaled, adjusting his silencer. He had been given a photo of Holt. A man with cold eyes and a history of killing threats before they could reach him. And yet here he was, alone, in an unprotected cabin. Ruiz didn't buy it, but money was money. He stepped out of the car, moving swiftly through the shadows, gun raised. He approached the cabin door, listening. Silence. Then, a flicker of movement in the window. Ruiz smirked. "Gotcha." He kicked the door open, gun ready. Click. Before he could blink, a wire snapped around his ankle. A split second later, boom. An explosion ripped through the cabin, sending Ruiz flying backward. His ears rang. His vision blurred. He tried to move, but his leg was a shredded mess of blood and metal. A shadow loomed over him. Travis Holt, standing there, calm, unshaken. He knelt beside Ruiz, his voice deathly quiet. "Tell Mitch I'm coming." Ruiz's vision darkened. His breathing slowed. And then, everything went black. Mitch stared at his phone, his throat dry as he read the message Danny had just sent him. "Danny, your guy's dead. He walked into a trap." Holt knew. He was waiting. Mitch's body went ice cold. Lauren sat up. "What? What happened?" Mitch turned to her slowly. "Ruiz is dead." Lauren's breath hitched. "Travis, he killed him?" Mitch nodded numbly. Lauren shook her head violently. "No. No, Mitch, this isn't a man we can fight. We need to run." Mitch grabbed her by the arms. "He's not a ghost, Lauren. He's just a man. And if he wants a war, I'll give him one." Lauren's eyes filled with panic. "You don't understand. You don't know what he's capable of." Mitch's patience snapped. "Neither do you. You think you were the only one lying in this marriage? You think I didn't know exactly what Travis was before you even married him?" Lauren's face paled. "What are you talking about?" Mitch exhaled sharply, his voice lowering. "Your husband wasn't just an FBI agent. He was a ghost operative." Lauren blinked. "What?" Mitch ran a hand down his face. "He didn't just investigate criminals, Lauren. He eliminated them. He worked black ops cases the government never wanted the public to know about." Lauren's stomach dropped. Mitch shook his head. "You didn't marry a cop. You married a killer." Lauren's breath shuddered. "Then, we're already dead." Mitch's eyes hardened. "Not yet." He picked up his phone, dialing Danny again. When the fixer answered, Mitch's voice was cold, controlled. "I don't want another hitman," he said. I want an army. Mitch sat in a darkened warehouse, surrounded by men who killed for a living. Danny Vega leaned against a metal table, lighting a cigarette. So, let me get this straight. You want to take down an ex-FBI ghost operative? The kind of guy who probably killed people like us for a paycheck. He took a slow drag, exhaling smoke. Sounds suicidal. Mitch clenched his jaw. I don't care. I want him dead. Danny smirked. You should care. You already sent one man after him, and what happened? Boom. Pieces of him all over the damn woods. He flicked his ashes. Now you want to send an army? Cute. Mitch slammed his fist on the table. Just tell me if you can do the job. Danny chuckled, nodding toward his men. They don't scare easy. But if you want Holt dead, we're gonna need bait. Mitch's jaw tightened. He already knew what Danny meant. Lauren. She was the one thing that could lure Travis out of the shadows. Mitch hesitated for half a second. Then he exhaled slowly. Fine. We use Lauren. Danny grinned. Now we're talking. Meanwhile, Travis sat in his car across the street, watching the warehouse through binoculars. He already knew. Knew Mitch was assembling men. Knew Lauren was the bait. Knew they thought they could outsmart him. A mistake they wouldn't live to make twice. He smirked, whispering under his breath. You're already dead, Mitch. You just don't know it yet. Lauren stood in front of the mirror, staring at the stranger looking back at her. Her reflection was pale, her eyes hollow. Was this what karma felt like? Mitch entered the room behind her, adjusting his watch. You're going to call him. Lauren turned to face him. And then what? Lure him to some abandoned lot so your mercenaries can kill him? Her voice dripped with venom. Mitch shrugged. That's the idea. Lauren crossed her arms. And if he doesn't show? Mitch smirked. He will. Lauren shook her head. You don't know him like I do. If you think Travis is walking into a trap, you're... Her phone buzzed. Both of them froze. Lauren slowly picked it up, her breath catching in her throat when she saw the message. Unknown, I know what you're doing. A chill ran down her spine. Mitch grabbed the phone, reading the message. His jaw clenched. Lauren felt sick. She turned away, gripping the dresser. It's him. Mitch snorted. No kidding. Lauren's hand shook. Then, another text. Unknown, see you soon. Lauren exhaled shakily, her pulse pounding. Mitch's smirk faltered. If he's coming, we'll be ready. Lauren didn't answer. Because deep down she knew they weren't ready at all. The abandoned warehouse smelled of oil and rust. The air was thick with tension. Lauren sat in a chair in the middle of the open space, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. She wasn't tied up. She wasn't locked in. But she knew there was no escape. Danny's men positioned themselves in the shadows, armed to the teeth. Snipers hidden in the rafters. Guns trained on every possible entry point. Mitch stood near the entrance, checking his watch. He's late. Danny exhaled smoke, unfazed. He's FBI. He'll come when he's good and ready. Lauren's stomach twisted. Then, the power cut out. The entire warehouse plunged into complete darkness. Lauren gasped. Oh God. A second later, gunfire erupted. A silenced shot cracked from the far side of the warehouse. One of Danny's men collapsed, a bullet lodged in his skull. Mitch spun toward the shadows. What the hell? More gunfire. Screams. The snipers fired blindly, but they had no target. Danny cursed, pulling his pistol. He's here. A metallic clang echoed from above. Footsteps on the rafters. Then, a body dropped from the ceiling, landing directly on one of the gunmen. Lauren screamed. The gunman didn't even get the chance to react before a knife slashed across his throat. Mitch fired wildly. Where is he? A voice whispered from the darkness. Right behind you. Mitch spun, but it was too late. A fist slammed into his jaw, sending him crashing to the ground. His gun skidded across the floor. Danny whipped around, firing. But Travis was gone, disappearing into the shadows. Then, another shot. Danny staggered backward, blood spreading across his chest. He collapsed, gasping for breath. Lauren froze. Mitch groaned, struggling to sit up. Silence. The only sound was the slow click of Travis's boots against the concrete floor. Then he finally stepped into the dim light. Alive. Unshaken. Dangerous. His piercing eyes locked onto Lauren and Mitch. He didn't say anything at first. Then he smirked. A slow, deadly smirk. Miss me? Lauren felt her heart stop. Mitch reached for his gun. But Travis was faster. A single gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Mitch screamed. Blood splattered onto the floor. Lauren clamped a hand over her mouth. Travis took a slow step forward, lowering his gun. Let's talk, he said smoothly. Lauren couldn't breathe. Because for the first time in her life, she knew what true fear felt like. Mitch clutched his leg, blood pouring between his fingers, his face twisted in agony. Lauren sat frozen in the chair, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Travis took his time, stepping closer, his gun still warm in his hand. His eyes flicked to Mitch's wound, a clean shot straight through the thigh. Not fatal, but painful. Exactly how he wanted it. You should have stayed dead, Mitch spat, his face pale from blood loss. Travis smirked. And you should have never tried to kill a man who's better at it than you. Mitch reached for his gun. Click. Before his fingers could wrap around it, Travis kicked the weapon across the floor, sending it clattering into the shadows. Mitch let out a strangled curse, his hands shaking from the pain. Travis turned his attention to Lauren. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared at him. I bet you thought you were smart, Travis said, tilting his head. His voice was calm. Too calm. Plotting my murder. Smiling in my face while hiring a hitman to put a bullet in my head. Lauren swallowed hard. Travis? He raised a hand. No. You don't talk. She flinched. Travis stepped closer, lowering himself to eye level. You were always good at lying, Lauren. But you forgot one thing. Lauren's lips trembled. What? Travis smirked. I was always better. The warehouse was silent except for Mitch's ragged breathing. Travis reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. He swiped to his messages, then turned the screen toward Lauren. Her blood ran cold. It was a recording. Lauren recognized her own voice instantly. Lauren, on recording, I know what I'm doing. He doesn't. He's blind. Mitch, on recording, we have to make it look like an accident. No loose ends. Her own words echoed in her ears. Lauren's stomach twisted into a black hole of horror. Travis had been listening the whole time. He had known everything. She barely found her voice. How long? Travis smiled. Long enough. Lauren shook her head violently. This wasn't, Travis, you have to understand. Travis's expression hardened. Oh, I understand perfectly. He crouched down, his voice dropping lower. Deadlier. You wanted me gone. And now. He smirked. I'm about to show you what that feels like. Lauren shuddered. Mitch groaned, trying to sit up. You're not gonna kill us. His voice was hoarse, but he forced a smirk. Because if you were, you'd have done it already. Travis's smirk grew. You're right, he admitted. Killing you now would be too easy. Mitch's confidence wavered. Travis stood up, towering over them. See, if I kill you now, it's over too fast. And you? He pointed at Lauren. You don't deserve a fast ending. Lauren's hands gripped the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. Mitch tried to push himself up, his legs shaking. So what's your plan, huh? He spat. Gonna let us walk out of here? Travis's gaze darkened. No. I'm going to burn your entire world to the ground. Mitch's face paled. Lauren's breath hitched. She knew that tone. Knew what it meant. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The warehouse reeked of sweat, blood, and fear. Travis took his time circling them, letting the weight of their own paranoia sink in. Lauren's fingers trembled in her lap. Her mind raced. Travis had a plan. And if she didn't figure it out fast, she was already dead. Mitch gritted his teeth, forcing himself to sit up. You're bluffing, he spat. Travis raised an eyebrow. Am I? Mitch clenched his jaw, trying to ignore the throbbing in his leg. He had to turn this around. You don't have proof of anything, Mitch forced out. Even if you recorded us, it's not enough to. Travis chuckled. Then he pulled a flash drive from his pocket and tossed it onto the floor between them. Mitch stilled. Lauren's stomach twisted painfully. Travis leaned against the nearest wall, crossing his arms. You think I just recorded your little bedroom conversations? Mitch's breath shuddered. What did you do? Travis smiled. Cool. Calculated. I gave everything to the FBI. Lauren's heart stopped. No. Mitch's face drained of color. You're lying. Travis cocked his head. Guess you'll find out soon. Lauren felt her world crumble. If Travis had turned over proof of their murder plot, the money laundering, the bribes, they were done. Lauren shot to her feet. "Travis, please?" Travis moved before she could react. A hand around her throat. Not choking. Just enough pressure to make her freeze. His voice was deadly quiet. "You don't get to beg." Lauren's breath hitched. Mitch stared. For the first time, real fear flickered in his eyes. Travis leaned in, his voice a whisper against her ear. "I want you to watch your life burn." Lauren felt tears sting her eyes. Because she knew. She knew she had finally lost. Lauren sat frozen, Travis's grip still lingering like a phantom around her throat. Her world was collapsing. Mitch's face had gone pale, his body stiff with pure terror. "The FBI," Mitch whispered, his voice hollow. You actually gave them everything?" Travis smirked. "Every last piece." He leaned down, lowering his voice. "You think I came here to kill you? No. That would be too easy. I want you to feel what I felt." He straightened, eyes gleaming. "Betrayed. Haunted. Helpless." Lauren's breath hitched. Mitch clenched his jaw, pushing through the pain in his leg. "You think you've won?" He forced a hollow laugh. "You don't know how deep my connections run. I can fix this." Travis didn't blink. "Go ahead. Try." Mitch grabbed his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. He called his lawyer, his offshore bankers, his contacts within law enforcement. No one answered. Lauren watched, her panic rising as Mitch tried again. No response. He turned, his face ashen. Travis chuckled. "Did you think I'd leave loose ends?" Lauren felt something she hadn't felt in years. Real, gut-wrenching fear. Travis took a slow step forward. "Your assets? Frozen. Your offshore accounts? Seized. Your dirty cops? Arrested this morning." Mitch's phone slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "You ruined me," Mitch whispered, his voice barely audible. Travis grinned. "No, Mitch. You ruined yourself." Lauren sucked in a sharp breath, her entire body trembling. She had married a monster. But she had betrayed a worse one. The warehouse doors burst open. Red and blue lights flashed violently. FBI agents stormed in, weapons raised. "FBI. Hands where we can see them." Mitch staggered back, his entire body stiff with shock. "No. No, no, no." Lauren's breath caught in her throat. This was real. This was actually happening. Mitch turned to Travis, his face twisted with rage. "You set me up." Travis simply shrugged. "I learned from the best." Lauren's stomach churned. Two agents grabbed Mitch, forcing him onto his knees. He struggled, but the blood loss had made him weak. "Mitchell Langford," an agent announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, bribery, and obstruction of justice." Mitch's eyes locked onto Travis. "You son of a b." Travis simply smirked as the agents slammed Mitch's face into the concrete. Handcuffs snapped into place. Lauren didn't move. She knew her turn was coming. The lead agent turned toward her. "Lauren Holt, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Lauren's knees buckled. The cold bite of steel wrapped around her wrists. Travis watched silently. This was the moment. The moment he had waited for. The moment she realized karma had finally come. Lauren sat in the back of the FBI transport van, shackled and shaking. Mitch was beside her, bleeding, defeated. Everything was gone. The money. The power. The control. She turned her head, her voice barely a whisper. "Travis?" Through the back window, she saw him standing in the distance, hands in his pockets. Watching her. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With satisfaction. And then, he turned. And walked away. Lauren felt something inside her shatter. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And she had never deserved mercy. The FBI transport van rattled as it sped down the highway, the cold steel cuffs digging into Lauren's wrists. She barely noticed. Her mind was spinning, replaying every single mistake. Every single choice that had led her here. Mitch sat beside her, silent for once. His hands were cuffed, his head resting against the cold metal wall. His breathing was uneven, his eyes glassy from pain and exhaustion. The weight of their failure pressed down on them. Lauren finally turned her head, her voice hoarse. "Say something." Mitch didn't react. She swallowed hard. "Mitch." He let out a slow breath, finally shifting his bloodshot eyes toward her. What the hell do you want me to say, Lauren? His voice was quiet, defeated. She hesitated. There has to be a way out of this. Mitch laughed bitterly. A way out? You still don't get it, do you? He shook his head. It's over. We lost. Lauren refused to accept that. She couldn't. She had always been in control. Always. And now, she was nothing. No power. No escape. No future. Mitch exhaled heavily. You think Travis stopped at just turning us in? He turned to her, his jaw clenched. You think the people we did business with won't find out? Lauren's stomach twisted. Of course. The criminals they had worked with, the dirty money they had laundered, the bribes, the secrets, they would know. And in their world? Loose ends didn't get second chances. Lauren's throat tightened. We have to get out. Mitch closed his eyes. Yeah. Good luck with that. The van jerked as it made a sharp turn. Lauren's hands clenched into fists. She wasn't just going to sit here and die. The FBI van rolled through the prison gates. Lauren's pulse pounded as she stared out the small window. Massive concrete walls. Towering fences topped with razor wire. The end of the road. The doors were yanked open. 2 guards pulled Mitch out first. He stumbled, his wounded leg barely holding up under the pressure. Lauren followed, her heart racing. This was real. This was happening. She turned her head instinctively, searching for Travis. But he was gone. She let out a shaky breath. Maybe that was the worst part. That he wasn't even watching anymore. Because to him, she wasn't worth it. The guards shoved her forward. Move. Lauren kept her head high, forcing herself not to break. Not to let them see her fear. But inside, she knew. She had played the game. And Travis had beaten her. Travis sat at a diner outside the city, stirring his coffee. The news played on the old TV in the corner. Former businessman Mitchell Langford and his wife, Lauren Holt, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Travis didn't smile. Didn't react. He simply breathed. It was over. Ava slid into the seat across from him, raising an eyebrow. So, that's it? You're done? Travis finally looked up. Yeah. She smirked. You don't sound happy. Travis exhaled, leaning back in his chair. Happiness isn't the goal. Ava tilted her head. Then what is? Travis glanced toward the window, the sun setting over the open road. He didn't answer. Instead, he dropped a few bills on the table and stood up. Ava watched him. Where are you going? Travis finally gave a small, almost unnoticeable smirk. Anywhere but here. And with that he walked out the door. A ghost in the wind. The prison lights flickered as Lauren sat alone in her cold, gray cell. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating her with every passing second. It had been 3 weeks since the trial. 3 weeks since she last saw the outside world. And 3 weeks since Travis disappeared. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Not the man she married. The man she betrayed. The man who had destroyed her life in the most brutal, perfect way possible. Mitch was in another wing of the prison. His high-profile status had earned him protective custody. Not that it mattered. Rumors spread fast in prison. The other inmates knew what he had done. They knew who he had betrayed. And in their world, loose ends didn't last long. Lauren sat up at the sound of approaching footsteps. Her new cellmate, a tall, scarred woman with dead eyes, stepped inside. Lauren tensed. The woman grinned. Word is, you used to think you were untouchable, she mused, cracking her knuckles. Lauren's pulse pounded. She wasn't untouchable anymore. And she knew it. Mitch sat in the dimly lit prison infirmary, his legs still aching from the bullet wound. The guards had kept him separated from the general population, but that didn't mean he was safe. Not in here. Not after what he had done. He could feel the eyes on him. Other prisoners watching. Waiting. He had bribed, betrayed, and sold out too many people. And now, no one was coming to save him. That's when he noticed it. A folded piece of paper sitting on the small tray beside his bed. His heart pounded as he picked it up. There was no name. No signature. Just 3 simple words. You're already dead. Mitch's hand shook. Then, the lights in the infirmary flickered. He heard movement. A whisper of footsteps. And in that moment, for the first time, he truly understood. Travis hadn't just ruined him. He had sentenced him to death. Travis sat in a dark motel room, staring at a burner phone on the table. Ava's voice came through the speaker. It's done. Travis didn't react. Didn't speak. Didn't celebrate. He just listened. Lauren? She wouldn't last long. Mitch? He was already a walking corpse. It was justice. Cold. Brutal. Final. And yet Travis felt nothing. Revenge wasn't satisfying. It was just necessary. Ava hesitated. So what now? Travis finally exhaled. Now. He picked up the phone, looked at it, then crushed it beneath his boot. And without another word, he disappeared into the night. A ghost. Forever. I hope you all have subscribed by now. And don't forget to leave your lovely and positive comments. Let me know how you found the story and which part you liked the most. Looking forward to your feedback. Lauren sat in the prison yard, her back pressed against the cold concrete wall. She kept her head down, her fingers lightly tracing the fresh bruise on her ribs. The first warning. Her cellmate, Candace, had been testing her, pushing her. And soon the games would stop. She had seen it happen before. Inmates who weren't built for this world didn't last. Lauren knew she was running out of time. She wasn't the queen anymore. She wasn't even a pawn. She was just another prisoner. The only thing she had left was her mind. If she wanted to survive, she had to start thinking like Travis. That night, she lay awake, her mind racing. She had played the game before, twisting people, manipulating them to her advantage. Maybe she could do it again. She sat up, glancing toward Candace, who was half asleep in the corner. Lauren took a slow breath. If she was going to survive in here, she needed protection. And she knew exactly how to buy it. The next morning, she moved carefully. She slipped into the laundry room, her heart pounding. A small group of powerful inmates, the ones who ran things inside these walls, were gathered in the corner. Lauren forced herself to walk toward them. The tallest one, Marlene, eyed her with amusement. Look who finally decided to introduce herself. Lauren swallowed hard. I need protection. Marlene smirked. And what do you have to offer? Lauren's lips curled into a knowing smile. I have information. Marlene raised an eyebrow. Go on. Lauren leaned in, lowering her voice. Do you know how much money Mitch Langford has hidden outside this prison? Marlene's eyes darkened with interest. Lauren exhaled. The game wasn't over yet. Mitch lay on his prison cot, staring at the ceiling, his body weak, his mind shattered. He hadn't slept in days. The message, "You're already dead," haunted him. He could feel it. The way the other inmates watched him. The way the guards ignored him. Something was coming. Something inevitable. And when it came, no one would save him. That night it happened. The power in his block cut out. His heart slammed against his ribs. Then the door to his cell creaked open. Footsteps. Mitch sat up fast. Who? A gloved hand clamped over his mouth. A blade pressed against his throat. A low voice whispered against his ear. Travis sends his regards. Mitch thrashed. But it was too late. The blade sliced deep. And just like that, Mitch Langford was gone. No trial. No second chances. Just karma. Travis sat on a rooftop in New Orleans, watching the city lights flicker below. His work was done. Mitch, dead. Lauren, rotting in a prison she would never escape. For the first time in years, there were no enemies left to fight. But that didn't mean he had peace. Ava sat beside him, nursing a drink. So what's next? Travis smirked, staring at the horizon. I disappear. Ava exhaled. For good. Travis nodded. Lauren and Mitch had taught him something. There was no peace in revenge. Just endings. And his ending? It was time to let go. He stood up, grabbed his bag and started walking. No phone. No destination. Just the open road. A ghost. Forever. Lauren had spent her entire life playing people. Twisting them, controlling them, getting exactly what she wanted. But prison was a different kind of game. And she was losing. Mitch was dead. She heard the whispers. The way the guards didn't even seem surprised. No investigation. No trial. Just another dead man who had crossed the wrong people. She knew who was behind it. Travis didn't have to pull the trigger. He didn't have to sneak into the prison himself. All he had to do was let karma do its job. Lauren sat on the edge of her cot, staring at the cracked floor beneath her feet. Her world was shrinking. She had no money, no power, no control. She was just another prisoner. And in here, she was prey. She had one last move. If she didn't use it, she wouldn't survive much longer. She had to make herself valuable. The next day she made her approach. Marlene, the shot caller inside the prison. The woman who decided who lived and who disappeared. Lauren had spent the last few weeks watching, learning. She knew how Marlene worked. And now, she needed to prove she was worth more alive than dead. She stepped into the cafeteria, heart pounding. The second she got near Marlene's table, the conversation died. The other inmates stared, waiting. Lauren ignored them. She met Marlene's eyes and spoke, her voice calm, controlled. "I can make you rich." Marlene leaned back, raising an eyebrow. "That's so." Lauren nodded. "Mitch had money stashed away. Millions. Offshore. I know where it is." Marlene smirked. "And you're just gonna hand that over?" Lauren forced a smile. "For the right deal." Marlene studied her for a long moment. Then finally she laughed. "I like you, Holt. You've got guts." Lauren exhaled slowly. Maybe she could survive this after all. Maybe. Travis sat in a bar in Mexico City, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of tequila. It had been 2 months since he vanished. 2 months since Mitch died. Since Lauren rotted away in her cage. Ava sat across from him, stirring her drink. "So, you ever gonna stop running?" Travis smirked. "I'm not running. I'm just not staying." Ava tilted her head. "And if I told you Lauren's still making moves?" Travis froze. Ava slid her phone across the table. "She's alive. She's making deals." Travis picked up the phone, scanning the screen. Lauren Holt, still dangerous. Still playing the game. Still not learning her lesson. Ava watched him carefully. "So, what are you gonna do?" Travis set the phone down, exhaling slowly. Then he smiled. "End it." Lauren thought she was safe. She thought she had found a way to survive. Until the warden called her to his office. She sat stiffly in the chair, her pulse hammering. The warden was a cold man, calculating, distant. But tonight there was something different in his eyes. Something that made her blood turn to ice. "You've made a lot of enemies, Holt," he said simply. Lauren's fingers curled. "I." The warden held up a hand. "You don't need to explain." He leaned forward. "But you do need to know one thing." Lauren held her breath. The warden placed a single sheet of paper on the desk. Lauren's stomach dropped. It was a transfer order. High security. Solitary confinement. No contact with the outside world. Her deals? Her power? Gone. She was being buried alive. Lauren's breath shook. "Who did this?" she whispered. The warden smirked. And in that moment she knew. Travis. Lauren's world crashed around her. Because this wasn't just prison. This was the end. And for the first time in her life, she had no way out. Lauren sat on the stiff metal cot of her new cell, her heart hammering against her ribs. It wasn't like her last one. No noisy inmates. No guards patrolling the halls. No Marlene. No one at all. Just her. And the thick, suffocating walls of solitary confinement. She gritted her teeth, her fingers digging into her palms. Travis had done this. He hadn't just destroyed her life, he had erased her. Her power, her alliances, her deals? All worthless now. And the worst part? She didn't even see it coming. The days bled together. The lights in the cell stayed on 24/7. She had no clock. No way to know if it was morning or night. The guards barely spoke. They slid food trays through the slot twice a day, but they never acknowledged her. She tried talking to them, pleading. No response. She tried screaming. No one came. And that's when she realized she wasn't just in solitary. She had been erased from existence. No contact. No visitors. No outside world. Just a cage. A prison within a prison. Lauren's breath shook. She had spent years manipulating people, controlling them. But now, she was completely alone. And for the first time in her life, she was powerless. Travis walked through the streets of Lisbon, Portugal, the ocean breeze cool against his face. It had been 3 months since he disappeared for good. 3 months since Lauren had been locked away forever. Ava sat across from him at a small cafe, sipping her espresso. She slid a newspaper toward him. "You'll like this." Travis didn't glance at it right away. Instead, he took his time stirring his coffee. Finally, he looked down. The headline was small, tucked in a back corner of the international section. Former businessman found dead in prison cell. Mitch. Travis sighed, setting the paper down. Took long enough. Ava smirked. You don't look surprised. Travis leaned back. I'm not. Mitch had been a walking corpse the second he walked into prison. Karma had just taken its time. Ava tilted her head. And Lauren? Travis exhaled slowly. Buried. Ava whistled. Solitary? Travis nodded. For life. Ava chuckled. Damn. That's worse than death. Travis didn't respond. Because deep down, he knew she was right. Lauren had spent her entire life charming people, controlling them. But now, she would die in a cell with no one left to manipulate. No one left to lie to. No escape. Just silence. And for someone like her, that was a fate worse than death. Travis watched the sunset over the Atlantic, standing at the edge of a quiet pier. He had spent years chasing justice. Years chasing revenge. And now, it was over. Mitch was rotting. Lauren was buried. There was nothing left to fight. Ava stepped up beside him, tucking her hands into her jacket pockets. You did it, she said softly. Travis nodded. Yeah. Ava studied him. So what now? Travis exhaled, staring out at the waves. For the first time in years, he didn't know. No more enemies. No more missions. Just him. Ava smirked. You could stay. Portugal's nice. Travis chuckled. Tempting. But he knew the truth. He wasn't the kind of man who stayed. Ava seemed to understand. She pulled a burner phone from her pocket, holding it out. New passport. A couple of fresh IDs. Plane tickets. All in here. Travis took it, nodding his thanks. Ava hesitated. You sure about this? Travis smirked. I was dead once already. He turned toward the street, slipping into the crowd. And just like that, Travis Holt disappeared. For good. Lauren sat on the cold metal cot, staring at the blank walls. Days had passed. Weeks maybe. She didn't know anymore. Time didn't exist in solitary confinement. There were no clocks. No windows. No voices. The only sound was her own breathing. And sometimes, she swore even that was disappearing. She had tried everything. Banging on the door. Screaming. Pleading. Nothing. The guards ignored her. The food trays were slid under the door twice a day, but no one ever spoke. She tried talking to herself. At first it helped. Then the words stopped making sense. Her own voice felt foreign. She had never been alone before. Not really. There had always been someone to manipulate. Someone to charm, someone to use. But now, there was no one. Just her. And her own mind. A mind that was slowly breaking. One night, she woke up gasping. A nightmare. Travis. Standing in the cell. Watching her. He didn't say anything. He just smirked. Lauren pressed a shaking hand to her face. Get out of my head, she whispered. But he wouldn't leave. Because deep down she knew the truth. Travis didn't need to kill her. He had already won. And now, she was rotting in a grave she had dug herself. The guards barely looked at her anymore. She didn't fight back. Didn't resist. Didn't even speak. She wasn't Lauren Holt anymore. She was just another ghost. One day the warden stepped into her cell. She blinked at him, barely recognizing his face. You have a visitor. Her heart stopped. Her voice was hoarse from weeks of silence. Who? The warden smirked. No name. Just said you'd recognize him. Lauren's stomach twisted. She was escorted into a small visitation room. She sat in shackles, her wrists chained to the metal table. She could hear the clock ticking. Tick, tick, tick. The door opened. A tall figure stepped inside. Lauren's breath caught. Travis. She felt nauseous. He was real. Not a hallucination. He took a seat across from her, calm, controlled. She swallowed hard. Why are you here? Travis smirked. To make sure you stay buried. Lauren felt something break inside her. Because this was it. Her final moment. And for the first time in her life, she had nothing left to say. Travis stepped out of the prison, the cool air hitting his face. Ava was waiting near the car. She raised an eyebrow. How'd it go? Travis exhaled. She's done. Ava studied him. You okay? Travis smirked. Yeah. It was over. For real this time. He had spent his life hunting ghosts. But now, he was finally free. The sun was setting over Lisbon, Portugal, casting a warm golden hue over the city. The sky stretched wide, endless, as the waves crashed against the old stone docks. Travis stood at the edge of the pier, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, watching the horizon. This was it. The end of the road. Everything he had spent years chasing, revenge, justice, closure, it was done. Mitch was dead. Lauren? Buried alive in a prison she'd never escape. And now, there was nothing left to fight. For the first time in his life, there was no mission, no target, no enemy lurking in the shadows. Just the open world in front of him. Ava leaned against the railing beside him, sipping from a bottle of cheap beer. "You did it," she murmured, staring out at the sea. "You really buried them." Travis smirked, shaking his head. "Nah, they buried themselves." Ava chuckled. "Fair point." She studied him for a long moment. "You're really gonna disappear, aren't you?" Travis sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's the plan." Ava nodded slowly. "No chance you'll ever come back?" Travis didn't answer right away. He looked at the ocean, the way the sun melted into the horizon, swallowing the last remnants of daylight. "I was dead once already," he said finally. "Maybe it's time I stay that way." Ava smirked. "Damn. That's dramatic." Travis chuckled. "You expected anything less?" She clinked her beer bottle against his. "Fair enough." For a long moment they just stood there watching the water. Then Ava reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black envelope. "Here," she said, handing it to him. Travis frowned, flipping it over. "What is this?" Ava grinned. "Everything you need for your next life. Passport, IDs, credit cards. Fresh start. No ghosts." Travis stared at the envelope for a moment, then exhaled. Ava gave him a mock salute. "Guess this is it." Travis nodded, slipping the envelope into his jacket. "Yeah." Ava watched him for a second, then smirked. "Don't get yourself killed." Travis chuckled. "No promises." And with that, he turned and walked away. No goodbyes. No looking back. Because ghosts? They don't leave trails. Lauren sat on the cold, hard floor of her cell, staring at the wall. The cracks in the concrete looked like veins stretching toward the ceiling, twisting into shapes that didn't make sense anymore. How long had she been here? Days? Weeks? Months? Time didn't exist in solitary confinement. She was nobody now. No power. No money. No name. Just a ghost rotting in a cage. And the worst part? Travis had never even laid a hand on her. He hadn't killed her. He had done something far worse. He had taken away the one thing she had always relied on. Control. She wasn't dead. But she wasn't alive either. And that was the worst fate of all. Somewhere across the world, Travis sat at a small cafe, sipping his coffee as he watched the city come to life. New place. New identity. No more enemies. No more ghosts. For the first time in his life he was free. He exhaled, watching the sunrise. And just like that, he was gone. A question for you. So tell me, after everything Lauren and Mitch did they deserve this fate? Would you have done the same thing if you were in Travis's place? Or do you think revenge isn't worth it? Comment below. I want to know where you're watching from. And hey, if you love stories like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Because trust me, the next thriller I have for you, it's going to be even more brutal. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, karma never forgets.